F1 on BBC Radio 5 Sports Extra.
It's Monaco Grand Prix weekend here, and what a weekend we are in for. The sun is shining, wonderful blue skies, 26 degrees the air temperature. You're always looking for nice weather when you come to the south of France. Monaco can be a little bit hit and miss at times, as we've seen many times in the past, but not so today. A very pleasant day for it indeed. And Max Verstappen is the man who leads the championship on 119 points. Sergio Perez second in the standings, 105 points for the Mexican. Alonso is third on 75 points, and then Hamilton, Sainz, Russell and Leclerc, the top 7 in the standings. And Charles Leclerc is the home hero. Can he finally get on the podium at Monaco? He managed to make it to the checkered flag last year, but yet to finish on the podium. What will the new Mercedes updates bring? What can Red Bull do in that intra-team battle? Can Sergio Perez keep up his form? A lot of very interesting questions, and a very interesting man who will be trying to answer them, the former Renault F1 driver Jolyon Palmer. If you listened to the Checkered Flag podcast last night, you will know that Jolyon and I are both Monaco apologists, is how I discuss. Lots of people, I don't know, Monaco, boring parade. I love it.
I think apologists is a bit of a negative word, though, to start the Monaco weekend as well, isn't it? We love Monaco. It's an iconic weekend in sport, let alone Formula One, and I'm absolutely buzzing to get this going. 19 corners, but it's the shortest circuit on the calendar as well by far, which shows just how tight and twisty it is. It's such a challenge for everyone. And, of course, everyone's had a slightly longer break as well. It's been a kind of stop-start to the season.
Yeah, it has actually, hasn't it? Down in the thick of it all is Rosanna Tennant. Afternoon, Rosanna.
Oh, good afternoon. And do you know what? I make no apology for loving the Monaco Grand Prix weekend. I'm standing in the pit lane. What a spot to enjoy what we're about to see, FP1. I can see the fans already in the grandstand. Quite a lot of Ferrari fans here, no doubt Charles Leclerc fans. But so many people here already. The boats are jam-packed in the marina here. And as I look down through the swimming pool section, I can just see so many people on balconies as well. And it's only free practice. I'm very excited, and as I say, I make no apologies for being so.
Yeah, you've never made any apologies for being excited, though, to be fair with that. I like it. Right, this will be the first half-hour session of the day. How different is a free practice one in Monaco compared to everywhere else? Is it the same, or actually when you drive out the pits you do get a bit of something?
Oh yeah, it's not the same as anywhere else. It's so tight and twisty. It's a nuts circuit to drive, this one, and that's why I think in Monaco, okay, the reason that you open this by saying we're apologists is because the race can be a little boring.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everyone's now listening to this thinking, is this going to be a good Grand Prix? We're buzzing for it. But actually on Sunday, it can be a little bit formational. But there's a couple of moments. Saturday qualifying tomorrow is just the moment of the weekend. The cars are at maximum speed, flinging it between the walls. But also I do love the start of FP1, where everyone tippy-toes out of the pit lane and they find their feet, and you've got to build up. You cannot just go and hammer it straight away like you would on a normal circuit. Barcelona, for example, next week, they'll be on it from lap 1, trying to think about balance and what the car's doing and upgrades. Here, you're just looking at the corners and you're thinking, well, where's the grip? I have no idea. And you just got to build it up bit by bit. Otherwise, you're going to hit the barriers pretty quickly and end on the back foot. So it's a really tricky FP1 session.
Rosanna, what is your perception on Charles Leclerc, and whether there's, obviously home race always brings with it pressure, but he's kind of under a bit of pressure at the moment in general, considering some of the mistakes that he's been making recently, and down in 7th in the championship. Do you get the vibe that it's a bit different for him this weekend?
Yeah, I think he's under quite a bit of pressure. I think the mistakes have obviously rocked his confidence a little bit. But I think he said to us yesterday that the moment I get back in the car, that confidence will come back. Of course, the problem is we're racing around Monaco. It's not one where you can afford to make just a tiny little mistake here or there. He'll end up in the wall. And we know he has had such bad luck here in the past. Do you know what I was thinking, though, guys? Last year, I remember watching Charles having dinner. That sounds really weird and creepy, but I was just on the other side of the road. And he was trying to have dinner on the Saturday night, and I remember thinking, shouldn't you be at home in bed getting ready and not being bothered by the fans? So if he can put it all together tomorrow in quali, I hope he has a nice quiet night, no distractions on Saturday, and so he can finish the job, because I know so many people, not just Monegasque people, but I think a lot of Formula One fans want to see someone stop this runaway Red Bull train.
Well, the light goes green at the end of the pit lane now. The cars make their way onto the circuit. A Red Bull of Sergio Perez was at the very head of the field. For those of you syncing up, 59 minutes and 46, 45, 44 seconds on the clock as they come through the 90-degree right-hander of Sainte Devote. Climb the hill, up Beau Rivage, towards the left-hander at Massenet, and then a right-hand flick at Casino Square, taking you down the hill in towards Mirabeau, the hairpin right-hander that then doubles back on itself at the hairpin left-hander at the Hotel Hairpin, before down into the next right-hander, which I believe is called Mirabeau Lower or something, but you never really tend to name it. Then into Portier, which used to be the shore, but now they've extended the land basically out into the sea and into the tunnel.
The circuit is looking resplendent as well, isn't it, Monaco? It's always with the harbour side that now the first drivers are getting down towards the Nouvelle Chicane, the yachts parked there. And from an aerial shot, it's difficult to actually work out very easily where the track is and where the normal roads are, because unlike a lot of other street circuits that we have now, they're kind of like half roads, but not really, or they're park circuits, or they're kind of like purpose-built streets in a way. This is real roads, and even in the evenings you could drive on the streets they're racing on, so it is an absolute street circuit down to the core, and it's great to see the cars on track.
Yeah, and if you are watching along, something interesting you might notice this weekend is you might be able to see more of what's going on, because for the first time Formula One themselves are in control of the TV cameras, basically, where they haven't been for the last, well, ever since Monaco started, to be honest, and it was one of the last ones to go in terms of Formula One having control. So you remember that famous Lance Stroll replay a few years ago. Hopefully those things are a thing of the past, and yeah, the circuit looks fantastic. Rosanna?
The circuit does look fantastic, and do you know what? I did drive on the track last night. I did about 142 metres. That's the same distance from pole to turn one, and that was all I managed. But it's a lovely place to be in the evening, with everybody out on track, people taking a lot of photos on the start-finish straight, obviously right at the start. They want to capture that. But do you know what? I've just crept down to the Mercedes garage, because I thought I would see a lot of paint pots. I thought they would be slathering their cars in Flow-Viz this weekend to see how these upgrades are working. But you know what? I can't see any. Maybe they've tidied it away, but you guys have got a better vantage point from me, being able to see them out on track. Have they got a bit of Flow-Viz on their new upgraded package?
Well, there's certainly, we'll wait till we have a look at it. There's certainly some Flow-Viz on the rear wing of Sergio Perez's car, because he's just coming through the final corner now and down over the start-finish straight.
I spied some on a McLaren as well. They're a little bit further down the very tight pit lane here in Monaco, but I saw a little bit on the McLaren, but not so much on the Mercedes. Do you know what? I was talking to the number one. Just pause for radio.
Yeah, the clutch is almost impossible out of the pits.
Okay, understood. Verstappen talking about his clutch leaving the pit lane, which he's, I think Ferrari and Leclerc were having clutch issues earlier on in the season. But do carry on, Rosanne.
No, I'm interested with a few issues. It seems to be a bit of a problem, doesn't it, their clutch? I was talking to the number one mechanic on George Russell's car, because just before the session went live, the world and his wife were outside the Mercedes garage trying to get pictures of this upgraded car. And the number one mechanic said to me, he said, I just can't even get near the car. So I'm sure it's been quite a trying few hours for the mechanics trying to do their job and bolt this new car together while everybody's trying to get a photo, especially those spy photographers.
Yeah, absolutely. Tyre-wise, everybody is on the hard tyre, bar Lando Norris, who's on the medium, and the two Ferraris, Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc, who are also on the mediums. So that's a mildly interesting decision from Ferrari. Tend to get the hards out of the way at the start of the weekend, because not particularly tough on tyres, Monaco, as Leclerc comes across the line and he goes third fastest. Norris quickest on a 1 minute 18.6, half a second ahead of Sainz, and then Leclerc third fastest. Bottas now goes up to fourth fastest in the Alfa Romeo, again on the hard tyre, as the Ferrari of Leclerc bounces up through Massenet and then flings it right down through Casino Square. Special helmet this weekend for the Monegasque man, and he's 8/10 up in Sector 1 on Lando Norris. And as you said before, Jolien, it really the lap times tumble here, more than we see anywhere else, really.
Oh, so much. We're seconds away from the pace right now. Alonso's just got to the top from Stroll, but Alonso's 9/10 up on Stroll between the two Aston Martins, first and second, as Hamilton comes through and goes second. We are still about 3 seconds away from what the quickest in FP1 was last year, and it should be a little bit quicker this year, you'd hope. So just shows how, even in the first 6 minutes, a couple of flying laps in from all the drivers now, all 20 cars out on circuit. No, 19, because Perez has come into the pits. But everyone's just still building up, and lap by lap the time's coming down. Leclerc is about to go to the top on his medium tyres, comes into Rascasse, Anthony Noakes.
Car's bottoming a lot.
Understood.
It's Verstappen's radio. Leclerc goes second fastest in the end, 2/10 slower than Norris, so loses a bit of time in the final sector. What are your thoughts on Leclerc coming into this weekend? Big weekend for him, or just sort of another normal, like, okay, his home race, but nothing more exceptional than that?
Well, I wrote a column for Formula1.com.
Okay.
After the Miami Grand Prix, which feels like a while ago now, because it was in the preamble before Imola. And it was, you know, amongst those highlighting that Leclerc's been crashing, but also I think there's such high expectations on Leclerc as well. So the pressure is no doubt on, and Leclerc's crashes, and he had a very, very underwhelming Grand Prix in Miami.
Yeah, the car in higher speed places is unbelievable, difficult to drive.
So Verstappen, that must be linked to bottoming then, and Red Bull with the car too low to the ground, or just too stiff to start as well. And Verstappen in 5th place on hard tyres. It's actually 3/10 away. The times are very close, but he's not very happy. Leclerc, yeah, he was very underwhelming, but generally he is such a fast driver that it's a bit of a tough one for him, as Sainz has had a little kiss at the wall already at the second part of the swimming pool, and he's actually, he's a brush. But that's the classic. That's where Leclerc had his crash in qualifying a couple of years ago. It's a balance for Leclerc, isn't it? It's so quick. He is thrilling to watch in qualifying. He's taken back-to-back pole positions at this circuit. Took 2 pole positions at Baku. When he's in the groove, he's the fastest man in Formula 1, I believe. Yeah, I think he is. Yeah, he makes mistakes and he does crash. He's very hero or zero. And so I think for me, Leclerc, it's about harnessing when to push and when not. I want to see Leclerc go all out for this. I think he can win the Grand Prix. Again, fastest driver in the field when he's hooked up. The Ferrari car should be suited to this circuit. There's a lot of positives for Leclerc here. And it's the sort of one where you can just go hero or zero, because it's all about winning in Monaco. There's no percentages to play on a Saturday. But in Miami, he didn't do himself favours, for example, by crashing in FP2 on a long run. And that's the needless stuff, where maybe he can rein it in a little bit in your practice sessions, in the long runs, where you're feeling it out. Don't go straight to the limit. Build it up slightly more. And I think it's just every time he gets in the car, he's hero or zero, and there's no moderation from him. And maybe that helps him get to the pace and be stunningly fast. But just some crashes, I feel, are so needless. And Sainz is not exempt either. The way he's just already hit the wall in this session, wouldn't it shock us if Sainz ended up in the wall here? The Ferrari duo pushed themselves so hard. But this is the classic time. We're 9 minutes into FP1. Sainz really shouldn't be tapping the walls just yet. Ferrari's on the medium tyres, they're now 1-2. But you've got to build it up. And that's where I think there may be a bit of moderation could come in from Leclerc. Keep going all out in qualifying in the races and give it everything, but having the needless ones adds the pressure on him as well, I think.
51 minutes and 10 seconds to go.
Where do you stand on Leclerc? Because he's a bit mercurial with his pace and his talent, yet his crash record and mistake record.
I think that he's no doubt quick. And is he the fastest driver in Formula 1? Quite possibly, yes. But I think for me the most interesting thing about Leclerc is his attitude, and his attitude is so kind of cool to me. He'll admit when he's made mistakes, and he will beat himself up about it, and he will this and that. And you kind of go, okay, yeah, that's great and refreshing and really interesting, but you can't help but, I sometimes can't help but think, is it a problem when he's so reflective and analytical and self-critical, because it appears to be against what every other successful sports person is. So it's refreshing, but it doesn't feel like... It feels like if he's missing something, and that's the one thing that makes him very different to every other racing driver, every other major sports person, is that a problem? And I don't know the answer to that, but he is so different to everybody else in that regard.
But I like it. I love it on the whole.
I love it, but I'm just asking whether does he need a bit more of something else in order to... Here's Hamilton's radio.
Yeah, rears are too hot.
He's on the hard tyre at the moment, Lewis Hamilton. But yeah, does he need a bit more something?
I don't think he does. He's so... lives life so on the edge that you can't say he's holding back or he's being cautious, and he doesn't, because he lives life on the edge when he's in the cockpit. He does make mistakes, and then he has to put his hands up and say that was my mistake. But even when we first saw him in Ferrari back in 2019, and he crashed in Baku in Q2 when he could have maybe had a pole, and that was the first the I am stupid message over the radio that's kind of become an iconic one for Leclerc. And then he had another one in Hockenheim, I think the same year, when he crashed in the wet from a good position. And again, he's like, and he's immediately taking responsibility. I think that's okay from a driver, and I think the team will like that and appreciate that, because there are times, and Leclerc knows only too well from last year, where the strategy's duff or the reliability's awful, and he can equally then say, no, I make mistakes, but this is your patch and we all have to improve. The problem is, accepting the blame, you kind of want to learn from it. If you're saying I'm stupid and then you're doing it again, then you're thinking, well, now you're really stupid. But this is over a long time. That was back in 2019. It's I think it's the consistency of crashing that's the issue for Leclerc, but he is still wonderfully fast, and he's about to come through and go back to the top of the times.
I still can't forget that blood-curdling scream that we heard at the French Grand Prix when he crashed out. That was a moment that we won't forget for Charles Leclerc. But I think, guys, it's also worth bearing in mind and remembering that the Ferrari is difficult to drive at the moment. Both the drivers saying how hard it is. Even in just one corner, the car behaving so differently and inconsistently. So perhaps there's a mixture of machine and driver play.
It's the rear bottoming out massively.
Yeah, understood, Max. Okay. So currently third, 15.7. Alonso, 15.6.
Yeah, I know, but that's irrelevant. We have to sort out race.
Okay, Tsunoda, 2 seconds. Yes, understood, Max. There was just information. We can't sort that from here, obviously.
A lot of traffic in the back part of the circuit up at Raskas. Everybody trying to find a little space. It's a bit chaotic. Do you buy that the Ferrari's difficult to drive, therefore? Because I don't remember Leclerc really having many ops in his Sauber year.
No, he did still. He still made mistakes in the Sauber year.
He span out of Bahrain like on the final lap or something, didn't he? He's running in the points or something, and anyway, I don't know, but
I remember in Japan, I think he made one. I mean, it was a good year in the Sauber year, and we are still talking about a driver that has sort of 2 or 3 bloopers in a year, crashes, unforced errors, really. And the tough thing for Leclerc is, I think we're comparing him to a Hamilton, Verstappen, maybe Alonso level of champion, or like Hamilton, maybe the greatest. Verstappen may well get to that status as well in time. We're comparing him to icons of the sport, and is, because he's got the talent maybe to be there. So that's why we're comparing him to that level. I think he's better than everyone else in the field, and the pace is there. But if he wants to be a potential champion, and that's what Ferrari want from him, that's why they signed him on the big bucks, then there is probably a few too many mistakes in there. And the Ferrari car, yeah, it's probably not that easy to drive, but there's a lot of cars in there, I'm sure, that are not that easy to drive. It's just how much, is he pushing too hard beyond the limits of the car? That's kind of how you end up crashing, when you go beyond the limit. Everyone can do that from time to time, all chasing the Red Bull, but maybe Leclerc is sort of refusing to accept the limitations of the car as much as maybe the Mercedes drivers are. Maybe that's also why he's got double pole in Baku, but it does have its risks.
Rosanna?
and they are sitting P1 and P2 currently, although they are on the faster tyre. This pit lane, I have to say, you might have heard the siren in the background there. That rings when a driver is coming into the pit lane, so you can have your wits about you, because it's so narrow, and the teams have about half the size of their normal garages to play with, so much so that the engineers and the pit wall is sort of situated upstairs on floor sort of 1 or 2 or 3 of the pit building. So, yeah, it's pretty cosy.
Just a lot of inside front under rotations. Struggling in general with rear grip, and the biggest thing is compliance from the front end, even from the rear is a struggle.
So Norris is locking up and has no grip at the rear or the front.
Sounds pretty tough. It's a green circuit. There's not a lot of rubber. We're in the first 15 minutes of driving in this session, or at the weekend, and as always happens, Norris is actually on the medium tyre as well, so he's probably got a little bit more grip than most others, aside from the Ferraris. Everyone else on the hard tyre. But yeah, locking up the inside fronts, that's natural around this circuit. You unload the inside front. There's all sorts of cambers and curbs on the street circuit. If the car's running stiff, which he complained of as well, the compliance on the front end isn't good, then you need to run it stiff for the downforce, but also you end up just having moments where your right front or left front into the hairpins just lifts up slightly and locks, and then the rear grip is just the rear grip. That'll come in with more rubber. He has just been millimetre perfect through the swimming pool section that Sainz tapped earlier on. Thought we were going to get a replay of Norris doing the same, but that was precision in the first 15 minutes of the weekend from Lando.
I'm just watching Lando being rolled back into the garage. They had a tiny bit of trouble getting the car propped up. They couldn't get one of the dollies underneath, so the rear jackman had to come out and lift it up. I wonder if it was the same rear jackman that gave up his bed to Nick de Vries because of the flooding. Maybe not. But Lando's been pushed back in. So much flow-vis over the back of the McLaren. And I was really interested yesterday, guys, because I was listening to Lando chatting to one of my colleagues.
Mate, I'm up the box. I'm going to shut like this with the car set up like this.
Okay, understood. You can box.
So Verstappen wants to pit. He's fed up with this. Do carry on, Roseanne.
Well, I was listening to one of my colleagues.
It was Fraser, by the way. It was
Fraser, but yeah. I wasn't sure whether that was. It will be the rear jackman, won't it? Because they share the rear jackman. I'm just not sure whether it was actually the rear jackman or just someone who picked it up and came out to help. There we go. I shall investigate. But yeah, very kind, letting Nick de Vries have his bed while he was trying to get to Faenza and trying to then get home.
But hang on, where did the rear jackman, Fraser, where did he sleep for the night?
I don't know. That part was omitted from the story.
A sofa somewhere or something. Oh dear, awful scenes. I digress. But Lando,
we digressed you, to be fair.
We digress, yes, I've been thrown. No. So I was listening to him talk about how he's feeling, and he was sort of going through the sort of normal problems you think that McLaren are having, and then he sort of rounded it all off with, but we're in a really good place. And I said to him, hang on, Lando, what? I can't believe you've just said you feel like you're in a really good place as a team. I said, well, yeah, I guess I kind of have to say that, because I need to be optimistic coming into these races. And I think that's probably it. It must be quite hard work trying to rally your enthusiasm when you're going to be travailing at the back of the grid like they were in Miami. So I like his positive mental attitude. Let's hope it's enough to push them up the grid this weekend, because as Zach Brown said, the car in Miami sucked. Well, it hasn't been that long since, so maybe it's a little less sucking.
Yeah. 41 minutes and 30 seconds to go, and this weekend McLaren actually running a special Triple Crown livery. So the rear of the car is orange, which is representing their Indy 500 win in 1974. The middle of the car is white from the 1984 Monaco Grand Prix win with Alain Prost, and the front end of the car, the front third, is black, which commemorates the Le Mans 24 Hours win in 1995, which was driven by JJ Leto, Yannick Dalmas, and Jolien. I thought you might know off the top of your head.
No way.
Masanori Sakia. I actually don't think I've heard of Masanori Sakia.
No, neither.
I've heard of the other two
every day.
Exactly.
And Le Mans winner.
Yeah. 40 minutes and 40 seconds to go. Just having a look at Lance Stroll coming into the final corner, and then Anthony Nogues. Oh, he's missed the apex and then had a big swing on the rear.
touched the wall a little bit. Car's okay.
It was a little brush.
Four-wheel drifting out towards the wall as well at one point. The front was sort of sliding across the tarmac, and then the rear fishtailed out as well. And there was just, as you said, a little brush. Got away with it. Alex Albon almost did the same just before as well. Drivers now 20 minutes into the session with averaging 13 laps between them, 13 laps each. They're starting to lean on it now, still on the hard tyres, all the mediums for Ferraris and Norris, and they're just starting to find the limits a little bit more.
1 minute 14.401 for Sainz, a tenth ahead of Charles Leclerc, a quarter of a second back to Alonso in third, 6 tenths to Verstappen in fourth. Stroll is in fifth, 1.2 seconds back. Ocon is sixth, Tsunoda seventh, Norris eighth, Hülkenberg ninth, Hamilton down in 10th at the moment. Bottas, Albon, Perez, Magnussen and Piastri the top 15. De Vries, Gasly, Russell, Joe and Sargent, the 20 runners. Okay, we're only very, very early into this free practice session, but Mercedes a little absent. Sergio Perez arguably not absolutely on it, a second away from Verstappen right now, as Gasly swings into Tabak in the Alpine, and then a little feather of the throttle through the swimming pool section. He's 1.3 seconds down after the first 2 sectors here, Gasly.
And when you consider Verstappen's been so unhappy with his car that he's come into the pits where he's going to crash, he's stopping fourth. He's the second fastest driver on the hard tyres. Alonso is ahead. He's done a good job in the Aston Martin so far. Ferrari, Aston Martin, the top 3. Magnussen has just gone fifth in the Haas, so that's a great lap from him. And it shows that everyone is still building up to this as well. Everyone's still finding a bit of pace. Perez has been through the pits and is a little out of sequence with everyone else, so he's playing a slight bit of catch-up. Was improving on this lap, but I think has backed off it. Plenty of traffic out there as well. So Perez down in 15th and over a second away from Verstappen. We know he can drive around this circuit though. He was very quick last year and won the Grand Prix. I'm sure it's just a matter of time before he can pump in a lap and get 2 Red Bulls up towards the sharp end. And Russell's back in the pits as well. Only 8 laps for George Russell. Came in early and he's not ventured back out to the circuit. Hamilton is in the pits and the other Mercedes in 11th. Russell 18th, a second down on his teammate. Mercedes with a big upgrade package, with side pods, and biding their time, doing their own thing at this stage.
I'm interested by this side pod thing because everyone's like, oh, they were going to bring it to Imola, but now you have to use it at Monaco, which is annoying or whatever. But Monaco is fairly unique and specific, but
it's completely unique and specific.
But you still have, broadly speaking, teams in their competitive order. You don't get to Monaco and suddenly Haas are at the front and the order is completely turned on its head. You still have the quickest cars running at the front. Okay, you get a few things like Ricciardo in the Red Bull, when he's able to win, the only time that season or whatever. There's some uniqueness to it, but you still if you're bringing an upgrade, there's Bottas very nearly into the back of Perez.
That's pretty close.
Yep, copy, we saw.
Coming up into La Rascas, but, it's unique, but you're still, if your upgrades work, they'll work here, surely.
Yeah, they will, because you still need downforce. So that's why Mercedes have bought their upgrade package. They're happy with the numbers. It's been a long time in the pipeline. It was meant to come for Imola, and so they had it ready, and they thought we either put it on now or we leave it for Barcelona, and they've gone with it now. The only thing with putting upgrades on is, the performance should still come. The car with the most downforce should be the best car around this circuit. And that's why sometimes you get different results. The Red Bulls back in the previous generation of car, when Mercedes were dominant, you still had Ricciardo winning once, should have won twice potentially without the pit stop. You have Ferrari, when Leclerc put it on pole 2 years ago, the car was bang average, but he managed to put it on pole, and last year as well. And I think Leclerc could be a favourite for this weekend because their car works in low speed. It's got downforce. They're just not good on the straights, where Red Bull are mighty. Red Bull can't use that around this circuit. So there are quirks, but it's downforce that is key, and that's why Mercedes will go with their upgrade, and they've got it on. They just want to make sure they don't crash it, and it's up to, I don't know how many spares they've got of these parts, because the other thing is Barcelona next week is the circuit for upgrades and downforce and correlation checks and everything. The bank of data they've got, the blend of corners at Barcelona is really good for understanding the car. Whereas Monaco, we're nearly halfway into this FP1 and the times are still tumbling by half a second a lap. It's so unique and characteristic. Not only can you crash, but every lap the track's changing.
Something's wrong.
Yeah, that's wrong.
Oh no, weird sound. No drive.
Keep pushing with it. Copy. Stand by, leave the radio off.
Logan Sargent cruising around in second gear, going at just 40 miles an hour as he comes down the hill through the Nouvelle chicane, well, straight over the Nouvelle chicane, trying to keep out of everybody's way. Yeah, it sounds really kind of throaty, doesn't it? He's picking up a little bit of speed now, getting up to like 44 miles an hour, 45 miles an hour into the back, but frustrating for Sargent. Slowest at the moment, 3.1 seconds off the pace of Carlos Sainz. Flashes of pace from Sargent this year. I know we spoke a lot about him in Miami, but some flashes of pace, just waiting for the actual kind of good result or the good point score or the strong qualifying, rather than threats of strongness, threats of strength, let's say.
Ever the wordsmith.
Yeah.
He's going to bring it back to the pit, so we're not going to have a yellow flag and a stoppage. Sargent comes around Raskas and will pull it in. It's tough for him, this, isn't it? Having not put a weekend together yet. I think his pace has been encouraging. James Vowles and the Williams team seem very happy with him. He's young. He is relatively inexperienced. He's a rookie, but he's been kind of fast-tracked into Formula One as well, with just 1 year in F2. And he's done better than I thought he would do against Alex Albon, who demolished Nicholas Latifi last year. Sargent is clearly a step up.
It feels like the wheels are not on properly.
Are the wheels on properly, Rosanna?
I can count all four. And it's a miracle I can actually count up to four. So there are four on there, I can confirm. He's being wheeled back into the garage now. As he came in, engine was turned off. So we shall wait. And I'm just looking, as you can imagine, everyone's around the Williams garage. But everything looks like it's in place to my untrained eye. But obviously they know with all the sensors if there's something amiss.
Well, I think he had just come out of the pits as well, Sargent.
Yeah.
So it could be exactly what he said. Wheel maybe not attached properly, and he cruised it back.
So looking at the rear right. So we've got a lot of mechanics working on the rear right tyre at the moment.
Sergio Perez has found a bit of pace. He has jumped up into 7th position, only a 10th slower than Verstappen. Verstappen has now left the pit lane, though, on a set of medium tyres. Perez is still out on the hard tyres that he's been on since the start of the session. Sound you can hear is the Mercedes of George Russell getting on the power out of Anthony Noakes, coming to the line. He's on the mediums now, Russell, and he goes 14th.
Brakes don't feel like they're decelerating very well.
Brakes don't feel good. Hamilton's on the fastest first sector of anyone, though, in the other Mercedes on the medium tyre, throwing it into the swimming pool section on a new run on the mediums.
Yeah, so this is new tyres for a lot of drivers. They've been in the pits. It's been a little bit of a lull the last 5 minutes, and they're straight back out again. And Russell not happy with the brakes, maybe missing a bit of brake temp. You've got to really lean on it, and you obviously need brakes around this circuit. So many times you're on them every few seconds. And Hamilton comes through and has no such issue. Goes to the top of the times, 2/10 quicker than Sainz on the same tyre. But the track will be better for Hamilton. We're going to see another flurry of lap times coming in soon.
1 minute 14.0. We'll see whether the Ferrari... Norris now jumps up into 3rd place on a medium tyre, which I think is the one he's been out on the whole time for him. We'll see what the Sainz and Leclerc, the Ferraris, go out on, because we're getting a replay actually of Logan Sargent's pit stop, and yeah, I'll be honest, the rear right didn't look neat and tight. It looked like it was all over a little bit too quickly, and as soon as he came out of the pits and got on the throttle coming up the hill, he obviously felt something was a little amiss. But yes, interesting to see what the Ferraris will go out on, because they've done their run on the mediums. Will they be out on a set of hards? It doesn't look super loose.
No, I think Sargent did the right thing in just immediately backing it off and bringing it back to the pits. That was a good move from a rookie driver who does just need a clean weekend. The Ferraris, I imagine, will go for another set of mediums, and they'll long run a hard later on. I'd have thought that's their game plan from here, whereas others will long run a medium and a soft. So it might just be the start of FP2 where we get the divergence. So it could well be everyone onto a set of mediums. Verstappen is on a lap now. Is he happy with the Red Bull? We haven't heard that he's not, and he comes out of the final corner quite close to the barrier, arcs to the right-hand side, crosses the line, and goes fourth, 4/10 down on Hamilton. Hamilton's time is really very good. 1.8 seconds quicker than Russell.
Yeah. Russell is on a push lap now. He's done it, but he's 6/10 of Hamilton in the first sector alone.
He hasn't got the confidence at this stage, Russell. He's done 12 laps. Hamilton's done 13. They're not, even though Russell came in the pits for a while, Lewis hasn't done a huge amount more. But when you're not feeling the brakes are working properly, it is a bit of a hindrance when you're so reliant on them for everything. The downhill hairpins in the middle sector particularly, but Sainte-Devotte's a tricky braking zone. The Nouvelle Chicane, where Lando Norris heads into, another tricky braking zone, flashing out of the tunnel. And Russell, just when you don't have the confidence in the brakes, it affects your whole corner entry phase, and you lose confidence elsewhere. So he just needs to find a little bit more there.
McLaren, the most successful Formula One team at Monaco, 15 wins. Didn't really know that. Into the final corner comes Oscar Piastri in the McLaren, and he remains 10th fastest. Finds a bit of pace, or finds a bit of lap time, I should say, but still 1.1 seconds away from Hamilton, and 7/10 slower than his teammate Lando Norris. Still the Ferraris in the pits. Verstappen out on the medium tyre, as we say. Did a personal best last time around. He's now on a cool down lap, but yeah, good lap time that from Hamilton at the moment. Naturally, Mercedes said it won't be the magic bullet or whatever the phrase is that they keep churning out, but they're quickest at the moment. But we saw that in Miami, didn't we? Every year in Miami they trick us, Mercedes.
Whoa, I'm impressed so far with what Hamilton's done. He's quicker than Verstappen, like for like on the tyres and on the run, and similar time on track. Max, I'm sure, is not going to be satisfied with the Red Bulls still, given how bad it seemed to be for him on that first run, pitted rather than crashing. So he's back out on circuit and trying to improve again now.
Any feedback on that change, Max?
Yeah, it's a little bit better on the rear, but yeah, it's still doing all the same things, to be honest, in all the bumps. It's really not good.
Okay, understood. You may have to live with it for this session, as we've discussed.
I think it might be a stiffness. As we join Verstappen on board, that's the sound you can hear now as he comes into the tunnel, keeps it pinned through the right-hander. He came out of Casino, and there is a little bump there, and it did just sound like the rear wheels just spun up a little bit on traction. And again, you just hear it squirming a little bit coming out of the Nouvelle Chicane as he's going over the bumps. Just a little peak of rev rise where he's getting just momentary wheel spin, and that's just unsettling the car and overheating the rears at the same time. Maybe they've just started with a baseline that's just too stiff on the Red Bull car, and they're missing the compliance.
And then that's not something you can necessarily change particularly easily during the session itself. Like, you can do bits and bobs, but not change too much.
It's difficult to make a huge change. You can change some anti-roll bar settings. It will just require some time in the garage. I'm sure that's what they've done. But maybe you maybe raised the ride height was the initial thing that they've looked at as well, because he did say it was just bottoming out. So it could be ride height, could be your some damping, some springs, these sort of things. And yeah, some of them, if you want to get the track time as well and feel the rest of the car, you just send it, you try and improve one aspect rather than turn the whole car upside down from your pre-event simulations. And Verstappen still wants a little bit more of kind of the direction that they've taken.
Less than 27 minutes to go. Rosanna.
Jack, I'm outside Logan Sargent's garage, where there's still quite a bit of action going on at the rear of his car. The rear right tyre is actually a problem. They took it off, and then a lot of work was going on sort of around the caked-in bit of the tyre, the internal bit, the rim. So they were sort of sorting that out while they took the tyre backstage. They brought it out. I've been trying to work out. I've been asking FIA people. They don't know whether it's the same tyre or a different tyre. But it's gone back on.
Exit of 3 and through 4, the thing's just sliding.
It feels like the front's too strong.
No, it feels like the rear's too weak.
Oh, we'll get into that one in a minute, but do carry on, Rosanna.
So Logan is ready to leave. The tyre went on, came back off again, now back on again, and he is now out. So there we go, a little bit of a dramatic scene down at Williams, but they've managed to get through it, and off he goes with not not as much running as he'd have liked, but hopefully that doesn't hamper his efforts to learn more about driving a Formula 1 car around this track. Of course, he's had experience before in F2.
Yeah, he is actually under investigation now, or noted, I should say, for being released in an unsafe condition, but back out on circuit now. Albon's on a reasonable lap here. He's only 3/10 away from Hamilton in the middle sector. Hamilton's still the fastest on a 1:14.0. George Russell 1.5 seconds away from his teammate. Just see Albon across the line. He goes 7th quickest, 6/10 back from Hamilton. But interesting chat that from Russell. They're saying the front is too strong. No, the rear is too weak. I mean, that's just balance, isn't it? What does he mean by that?
So you're right, it's balance. And George is on the radio saying he's sliding around at the rear, especially at turns 3 and 4, I think he said, which is Casino or Massenet Casino, that complex. But it is just balance, and he's feeling like the tyres aren't in the working range. So he's basically said, okay, if you've got too much oversteer, if you've got too much front end, and when you say no, the rear's not good enough.
So is the front too strong? He said no, the rear's too weak. Oh, damage on the left rear of Hulkenberg as he makes his way back onto the circuit. He was facing backwards down at the Nouvelle Chicane. It's an odd one.
Has he dinged that on the apex, I wonder? If he's just done
the rear left on the apex?
On the apex of the left. If he's turned it into the left, you get right up to your apexes, the walls, the same way as Sainz hit that one at the swimming pool very early on in the session, just a gentle brush. Hulkenberg maybe has snagged it a little bit more on a lower speed corner and just turned the car around on it. That's my guess.
No, I like
he's
it.
bringing it in.
Never really seen that before. If you're going to hit it, you tend to hit the front.
No, you can do the rear. From time to time, it happens. I remember doing a qualifying session here, and someone had done that, and I can't remember who. I think Tsunoda did that a couple of years ago as well. Gutierrez had a crash at Rascasse in 2014 doing that. Hulkenberg limps it back to the pits, and we'll await a replay to confirm my hypothesis.
He's making his way down to Rosanna.
Yeah, and there are only 3 wheels on this car. Well, the fourth is sort of lolling, I would say. And there you go, the Haas has been turned off. Do you know what? Nico had been busy watching, as I'm sure a lot of the drivers were, busy watching the onboards from last year's race. Of course, he didn't race here last year. And he was saying they just look so fast. And, of course, it's a beast, this circuit, and it's got the better of him. So hopefully this will be a quick turnaround. But, yeah, the tyre is deflated and sort of leaning against the rear wing.
Red flag is out. So I'm not sure why the red flag's out. Maybe there's some debris down at the Nouvelle Chicane. We've just seen a load of replays of the Hulkenberg thing, and I don't know.
Well, it wasn't what I said. He's lost it in the chicane. So through the left, and then he's made the left. He hasn't touched the wall, and then he's turned it to the right. The car has just spun because he's already got a puncture. So where has the damage? There's rim damage on the car. So he must have hit the wall somewhere to sustain rim damage, deflate the tyre.
Exit of Portier?
Yeah, that's a sketchy one, then flat through the tunnel. And then the next corner after that, he's done it. Maybe, did he definitely not tap the wall? Yeah, there's a little bit of debris down there as well. He then clouted the curb on the apex. There is debris. I think he might have still kissed that wall.
I think he's popped the tyre on the wall. I think he's popped the tyre, so then when he turns right, it just goes around.
Yeah, and there is a little, just shards of carbon fibre there. We've got a red flag out because that's going to need moving. It's on the racetrack. And so I think that is initial hypothesis, just not in such an obvious way. He's just glanced that wall, just again a fine kiss, but it's enough just to, as you say, pop the tyre. Then he's turned to the right, the rear left is deflated, you lean on it, it sits down, and you go spinning around. And so yeah, that's Hulkenberg. He'll get it back, put a new set of tyres on, and that'll be fine for him. But it is our first red flag at the weekend.
Fernando Alonso had gone second fastest, 600th slower than Lewis Hamilton. So Hamilton quickest on a 14.0, 600ths to Alonso, 2/10 to Sainz, 3/10 to Verstappen, 4/10 to Norris in 5th, half a second to Leclerc in 6th, 7th is Alex Albon in the Williams, 8th is Perez, 9th Tsunoda, 10th Bottas, Piastri, Stroll, De Vries, Russell and Magnus in the top 15, Ocon, Hulkenberg, Gasly, Zhou and Sargent, the 20 drivers. And it's 1.8 seconds down to Gasly. And then there's a second from 18th to 19th, Gasly to Joe, and then another 4 tenths from Joe to Sargent. So the top 17 and 18 are all kind of together, and then Joe and Sargent a little bit adrift. Rosanna?
I'm just standing watching what the mechanics are up to at the back of Nico Hülkenberg's car, and there's a lot of work going on the rear left side. Did you see him glance the wall? I was trying desperately to find screens, so it's hard down through the pit lane.
No.
So just wondering if there was a tap, are they then maybe investigating rear suspension, things like that? I don't know. I mean, we often see that, don't we? A glancing blow here can have ramifications for gearbox and rear suspension. So, not sure. Front wing's coming off anyway on Nico's car. Maybe they're just doing a bit of giving it a bit of a once-over. But cars now are heading to the end of the pit lane and getting ready to resume the action.
Yeah, session has restarted again already. Very, very swift resumption. With 25 seconds to go, they said the session will start at 2:10, and it has got underway now. So good lap that from Alonso as well. If we had, a Hamilton versus Alonso versus Leclerc fight at the front, and Verstappen's a little bit further, that could be quite interesting, that.
It's fun at the moment, isn't it? 40 minutes into the session, 2 runs for everyone now, all on the medium tyres, and it's a Mercedes from an Aston Martin from a Ferrari. Verstappen 4th, 2 tenths away. Times are very close. You've got McLaren. Norris has had a good session so far, and he's lying in 5th. Given where McLaren were last time out, that's a big step forward. Yeah, it's all to play for, and no one seems particularly happy. The grip level overall is very low. And back to the Russell thing, saying, is the front too strong? They said, no, the rear's weak. Basically, do you want to rebalance the car? If you've got too much oversteer, then take off a bit of front wing and help the rear. But George just saying, no, I want the front as it is. I'm okay with it. Just give me a rear that can support it. Give me more rear grip than take away front. Easier said than done for Mercedes. Maybe it's simply getting the tyres into the window for George, and he's feeling the sliding, but it is just a feeling of balance from the cockpit.
18 minutes and 23 seconds to go.
He's a second and a half off Hamilton, and he is struggling out there so far. So I'm sure it's a tyres thing and then a confidence thing, and that's maybe the case for Zhou as well, who's a long way off his teammate. And at this stage, it's the sort of thing where you need to have the confidence to then lean on and find your margins each lap. When you feel like you're going to crash, as we heard Verstappen say earlier on, it's just so hard to approach the next corner and be fully committed. And it's a bit of a snowball effect as well. So Russell at the moment is not in a decent window in that Mercedes, whereas Hamilton just pumped in a really, really good lap on that first lap on his medium tyre. So he clearly got them fired up. And that Mercedes looks great. It looks nice on track as well, doesn't it? With the side pods again.
Yeah.
I didn't like the zero pod. I didn't like the aesthetic of it. It wasn't for me. I appreciate the innovation.
Yeah.
And that was the fun of it. It's not a Formula 1 car, is it, without a side pod?
When did side pods start? Must have been the sort of 70s.
Yeah, I'm imagining
early 70s.
74, maybe.
74. Very specifically, yeah.
Did Jackie Stewart race with side pods?
Yeah, those Tyrrells had side pods. For sure. And I presume it was for cooling, I guess. I don't know. 17 minutes to go.
Maybe we're going late 60s.
Yeah, maybe. Well, Petroleum researches that incredibly important information. The Ferrari of Carlos Sainz is just coming around the final couple of corners now, and Sergio Perez, I think, started a push lap last time, bailed out of it at the top of the hill at Massenet, but now has done a 19.4 in the first sector, so that's a bit more like it from Sergio Perez. He's now coming through sector 2, down through Mirabeau and the hairpin. Fernando Alonso also starting a lap, and he's done a quick sector 1 as well, fractionally quicker than Sergio Perez, and he's a 10th down on Lewis Hamilton in the first sector. Down through what was the station hairpin, became the Lowe's hairpin now. I don't really know what it's called, so we go for hotel hairpin. Little twitch from Alonso as he comes out of Portier through the tunnel down towards the Nouvelle chicane, and he's going quick here onto the brakes through the left, the 2 rights, and then straightens the wheel up for the blast down towards Tabac. Little dab on the brakes, throws it into the left-hander. And compared to Hamilton, he's a quarter of a second up. After the middle sector here, Fernando Alonso. On the exit of the swimming pool now. Round La Rascasse, there's a slowish Williams up ahead of it. Sorry, it's an Alpine. It keeps out of the way very nicely. Alonso out towards the line. And Alonso goes quickest. A 1:13.907, just over a tenth quicker than Hamilton. Not a personal best in the final sector, but maybe that Alpine just causing him a little bit of time loss. But Alonso to the top of the times on a 13.9. Verstappen's on an outlap now on a medium tyre.
Perez third in the Red Bull as well at the same time. It's so nice to see Formula One cars being thrashed around this circuit.
Yeah.
Alonso was on it there. First lap out after the red flag, medium tyres, the same set that he was on before, and he was giving it some to get the Aston Martin to the front. Few people tipping Alonso as well for this weekend. Leclerc's my outside tip. I think the Ferrari
outside. I thought you were yesterday you were saying favourite.
Yeah, no, I'm going with Leclerc. Okay, needless to say, the Red Bulls are going to be in contention for the victory this weekend. But outside of the Red Bulls, I'm going Leclerc, and I think he could even be the favourite, given the Ferrari's pace on low speed and Leclerc's pace around here and Baku street circuits, and Singapore for that matter as well. The guy's rapid on street circuits. So I think, for me, he's still the guy to watch out for. But a lot of people, and Rosanna included, saying Fernando Alonso. And that Aston Martin is very good on traction as well. That's been a big strength of theirs. And there's plenty of times where you need to dump 1,000 horsepower with your right foot around here. And that's where Fernando there, just leaning on the Aston Martin, has done a pretty good job so far.
Yeah. I thought that was very entertaining, Rosanna. That little horn that happened just as Palmer says Rosanna picked
They did it
Rosanna
again.
picked Alonso.
Exactly. Sounds like Countdown or something, doesn't it? I like the little klaxon. It's very helpful, as I say. Always trying not to get run over down in the F1 pit lane. You were chatting about side pods. I was doing a little bit of research whilst I was down here as well, multitasking. I've seen an avid fan has posted on a forum saying that the first was on the March 701, but that was when they were used as fuel tanks. And then later in that same season, it was the Lotus 72 that changed the front air intake and then located the water and the oil radiators over a side pod.
Great news.
So that might help.
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, it absolutely does. We've just had a little bit of niggle between Verstappen and Hamilton. I wasn't 100% sure what happened, but I think there's a car off at Saint Devote as well. Oh no, maybe it's resumed. Yeah, it was one of the Haas cars straight on at Saint Devote. So that was Kevin Magnussen. But yeah, one of them cut the chicane, and then Verstappen then slowed down to bulk Hamilton. We're going to see what happened here. Hamilton coming down into the Nouvelle chicane, through the left and the right. Hamilton goes straight on and cuts the chicane, I guess to get out of Verstappen's way or something, and then Verstappen goes in front of Hamilton and then kind of comes to a bit of a halt coming through to back. So maybe Verstappen felt he was held up a little earlier on in that run. It was a fairly straightforward run off for Magnussen at Saint Devote, and did the lovely little Bottas UE and got back on his way. But a little bit of beef there. Sainz quickest on a 1:13.690, 600ths quicker than Alonso.
And Alonso's just improved as well, so the two Spaniards improving, now putting 3/10 back to Hamilton. I do still love a bit of Hamilton-Verstappen rivalry, even though they can't really race each other legitimately at the moment. Maybe they can this weekend, who knows. But that was Hamilton. It didn't look like he impeded Verstappen too much, but he stayed on the racing line into the Nouvelle chicane and then just cut it to presumably get out of the way of Max. But Max was already distracted and couldn't commit to the brakes because Lewis was there, and gave him quite the kind of move in front to back and then slow down just to box him in and make his point. They spent the whole of 2021 saying that there's no animosity between them and is all built up by the media. Yet they still get together on track, and there's fireworks. Is Brazil last year.
Yeah.
Verstappen can race cleanly with everyone and then sends in a bit of a lunge on Hamilton.
Melbourne this year. Right?
Melbourne this year was close, although Russell's entered the fray as well in support of Hamilton and also getting argy-bargy with Max. sport needs rivalries. I don't like to see everyone playing nice. It's boring. You want to see a bit of drama between your stars.
So Perez has just gone 4th fastest. He was quicker than Sainz in Sector 1, but lost a bit of time over the remainder of the lap. Max Verstappen, meanwhile, is coming into back now, and he, compared to Carlos Sainz, is down by 0.3 of a second. So similar pace here between Verstappen and Perez. Oh, and a moment on the way into the out of the swimming pool, and he gesticulates with his hand, and very frustrated Verstappen, I think, with his car at the moment.
I tell you what, he is angry in that cockpit. He was just hitting I don't know if he hit the steering wheel or just punched the air with frustration. Had an oversteer into the second part of the swimming pool. He caught it really nicely. The rear, as he turned into the right-hander, is such a sketchy corner, that. The one that Sainz glanced the wall on earlier on. You see so many crashes on the quick second part of the swimming pool. And Verstappen just got sideways as he turned it in, caught it, went over the runoff, and then was just remonstrating with himself at the cockpit. He's not happy. He's not been happy from the word go with the Red Bull. And he did say it's difficult to drive, it's sliding from the rear. And
in the high speed.
And exactly, that's just, you'd lose confidence. And he was not about to set the world alight with his time. He was improving, but was going to be... it looked a bit less dramatic on board than it did from the outside. But yeah, just a wave in the air and a real sort of motion of just frustration from Max in the cockpit. And maybe he would have chipped away at 10th if he hadn't have done that. But he's definitely starting this one on the back foot. Perez is now ahead of him. It's not been a great start to the weekend for Verstappen. And he already said, actually, coming into this, he's expecting rivals this weekend. Last time in Miami, he said, if we have a good weekend, we'll win. If we have a bad weekend, we'll finish second.
Yeah.
Not the case around Monaco. And maybe that's why the pressure's building on him. In a championship chase with Perez, who's always good here, you get a couple of cars in between them, and it can be quite the swing in the championship.
Right, here comes Fernando Alonso coming through the tunnel now, down towards the Nouvelle chicane. He's done the fastest first sector of anybody. He's out on the medium tyre, turns into the left, the right, and then the left again, down towards Tabac. He might get a little bit of traffic up at Tabac because it's very, very slow up there. Middle sector-wise, it's a 34.8, so a tenth slower than he's managed previously, but he is still up on Carlos Sainz's lap time. Coming into Rascas now, it's very, very busy. He's managed to find his way past one of the Alpha Tauris, comes across the line and pretty much matches Carlos Sainz's lap time. A 1 minute 13.710, lost, what did he do in the, lost 2 tenths compared to Sainz in the final sector, which did look trafficky-ish.
Yeah, it's difficult when everyone's slowing. Even if they get out of your way, it's difficult to have the confidence that they're not just going to turn in. And with the track being so narrow and grip being at such a premium at this stage as well, if suddenly a car that you think is getting out of the way jumps on line, it becomes kind of an inevitable crash. So it's difficult to have full commitment at that point.
A little bit earlier, got held up by Perez.
Yeah, these guys are incredible.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, you did your best there, and he didn't help back. Copy that.
Yeah, I don't care. I will be on the racing line all the slow laps.
Yeah, copy that. It was Perez.
Imagine Fernando will let that go. He's not one to hold a grudge, is he?
Here comes Verstappen out of the final corner. He is improving here in the Red Bull. Clunks out of Anthony Noakes, comes across the line, remains 6th. So found lap time in the first sector. Not personal best in sectors 2 and 3, but remains half a second adrift of Carlos Sainz, who, by the way, is 4 tenths ahead of Charles Leclerc at the moment.
Yeah, Verstappen's just not that quick. He is improving sector times here and there, but not by much, and none of his sectors look especially fast. We know he's not happy with the car, and they made changes. He's been in the pits, and he's still not particularly happy with it, so maybe that will be a big head scratch for Red Bull over their lunch, and see if they can just find some compliance in the car and give Verstappen some confidence to attack. At the moment, he is just very frustrated and is down in 6th place. Red Bull at 4th and 6th. And Sainz is flying. He's also, not only is he top, but he's about to extend his margin out of front. He does by a huge margin.
3 tenths of a second, Carlos Sainz. A 1 minute 13.3, so 3 tenths quicker than Alonso, 6 tenths ahead of Hamilton. That's now 8 tenths quicker than Verstappen. But what can this man do? Charles Leclerc coming into Casino Square. And through the first sector, compared to his teammate Sainz, he's up by 0.05 of a second.
Okay, here we go. Leclerc's been quiet in this session, but I know he's quick around here, and that Ferrari car is looking hooked up in the hands of Carlos Sainz. Surely Leclerc could be closer than 7 tenths away, and this is looking like a better lap for the local driver. Liv just up the road from Saint-Devote, flashes through the tunnel. Esteban Ocon jumps out of the way in the Alpine, and Leclerc's a little hint of a lock-up into a Nouvelle Chicane, but still gets it stopped and turned in. Absolutely on it as he flashes now into Tabac and the high-speed corners. Ferrari car looks pretty stiff as well, bouncing over the bumps on the exit of Tabac.
Hey.
Whoa! I thought he was straight in the wall. Did a very similar moment to Verstappen, and now he backs off. What was a classic Leclerc do-or-die lap,
Yeah.
and that one, it was a survive, but wow, that was a snap.
Yeah, locked up the right front coming into the Nouvelle Chicane, and then the back end, as you say, going on the way into the exit of the swimming pool.
His heart will be racing.
That was a bigger snap than Verstappen's, for sure. Verstappen's was a bit of a... It started to wander a little bit, whereas it was a big one for Leclerc.
Yeah, he just started braking off the curb. He was a bit greedy coming into the Nouvelle Chicane. That's turn 10, and that's where the right front lockup happened. But he still managed to release the brake and turn it in and keep decent speed through there. Now you're going to hear a replay of him. Oh, it's a snap as he gets to the apex of that second part of the swimming pool. Turns it to the right, and the car just drifted away. And at full racing speed, that needed some reactions to save it, and Leclerc had that. Used the runoff area to cut through, the same as Verstappen, and he'll go again on the next lap. Oh, he could so have done without crashing that. At least he saved it.
Hulkenberg into the pits, as is Joe, as is Bottas. Everybody else on circuit think there is a car up. Oh, it is Albon in the wall on the run up out of Saint-Devote. The red flag is out. The session will end, because I think Albon's gone into the classic into the wall on the exit of Saint-Devote. The front left and the rear left broken off the car, and that is the session obviously done for everybody, but also for Alex Albon in the Williams.
He's had a good session until this point as well, in the top 10.
Yeah,
on not a Williams circuit. Williams good in Australia. Albon was a star until he crashed, and just had great pace, but normally they're good in a straight line. Not many straight lines here, and Albon still with some pace, which is encouraging, but he has dipped it pretty hard into the wall on the left-hand side. Saint-Devote is the sort of corner, if you're going to bail out, you need to bail out before you turn in, and that's what Magnussen did earlier on. As soon as you start turning in, if you're carrying too much speed, you're going to end up in that barrier on the outside, and that's what Albon must have done. And he's on the radio, he's okay. Bit of a whack, and you won't lose any track time at this stage, unless they can't repair it for the start of FP2, because the session will not be resumed.
You bailed out halfway down the start-finish straight of Saint-Devote. That's how early...
Yeah, exactly. I knew I was carrying too much speed, and I thought, you know what? If I shove it into the wall on the left-hand side of the straight, I'm definitely going to be okay.
Just getting a replay of Albon going into... Oh, the back end went.
It looked relatively under control.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, just banged my knees by a frame.
Yeah, it looked relatively under control for him as he turned it in, but the rear just slid. And he's on the hard tyres as well, Albon, so he's got a little bit less grip on those than everyone else. Still pressing on, and the rear just went, and he was, as soon as he got offline as well, that bit's rubbered in, and you start getting wide, and it's dirtier, and it's your natural streets, as they're probably a bit grubby, as well as Monaco does at cleaning them up. They're not rubbing in, and he didn't find the grip. But a tall driver, Alex Albon, as well, so that's why he's over 6 foot tall, hunkered down in a cockpit. You do have your knees quite high to the underside of the tub, and or the chassis top, and he's just given them a smack as he's hit the wall, but he'll be okay with a bit of a bruise, I imagine.
Right, well, that concludes the session. Carlos Sainz quickest on a 1 minute 13.372, 3 tenths ahead of Fernando Alonso. Lewis Hamilton third, 6 tenths back from Sainz. Perez fourth, also 6 tenths back. Leclerc fifth, Verstappen sixth, 7th for Norris, 8th for Ocon, 9th for Stroll, 10th for Alex Albon. Then it's Bottas, Magnussen, Tsunoda, Gasly and Russell, the top 15. De Vries, Piastri, Sargent, Joe and Hulkenberg, the 20 drivers. And yeah, good day that for Carlos Sainz. Rosanna?
Yeah, lovely start for Carlos Sainz. So Charles Leclerc being unable to improve. It just worries me, though. Just a little mistake like that tomorrow afternoon, and his weekend will come unstuck. So I think a little bit of cool and calm, collected Charles this afternoon, get his confidence back, and then hit tomorrow hard in front of these Monegasque fans who are cheering him on in the glorious sunshine down here, just over the side of the other way of the wall of the pit lane.
Is Sainz a little flattered by those lap times there, because the session ending and maybe Alonso was going to do another lap, Leclerc would have had another go?
Alonso was improving and was about 10 metres away from crossing the line and getting that on the board when the red flag came, so we don't know actually what his improvement was, but would have got closer. Leclerc was on an okay lap, but was actually down on Sainz through 2 sectors. Let's just say great job to Carlos Sainz. Let's not say he's flattered. That was a very accomplished session from a driver that tapped the wall early on, but from then on was more in control than Verstappen was sliding, Leclerc was sliding. It's encouraging for Sainz and Ferrari, and he needs a good weekend as well. We talk about Leclerc, but Sainz hasn't had a podium yet this season. He's got some decent form around here as well.
Yeah, only one podium this season for Ferrari, which, considering they have, well, maybe the second quickest car, but at least the third quickest car, is quite remarkable. Verstappen today, Rosanna, struggling. Kind of no. I've not seen him sort of in the weeds like this for quite a while.
But, okay, yeah, we heard him struggling with the clutch and being a bit disgruntled on the radio, but don't we often hear that in FP1, that it's never quite to his liking, and then, ta-da, the magic wand, and suddenly it's all good, and he's right up at the front. Okay, sure, qualifying hasn't been their strong suit this season, but they're not far away. I'm sure that a little tinkering here or there with the mechanics and the engineers over the course of the lunch break, I'm sure he'll be fine. Just fine, Jack.
Are you sticking with Alonso for the win?
Yeah, of course I am. Absolutely. No, I think so. Look, why not? I think we need someone to get in amongst it with the Red Bull guys. Otherwise, we're just focusing on that intra-team battle, aren't we? And I think we need more. We need more than that for this season to be a real classic.
So Red Bull, well, sort of struggling a bit, certainly with Verstappen. George Russell's going to be concerned, isn't he, after that session?
On the one hand, yes, because he was a long way away and never found grip and therefore confidence. But on the other hand, at least Hamilton showed pace in the other car. So his side of the garage can look across and just see what was working for Lewis and try and implement it for George as well. It's better than both Mercedes being slow. At least there is a kind of a correct working on the other side of the garage that you can move towards. And with the car working, I'm sure that George can be pretty close to Lewis. Or be right with him. We've seen it all the time. They've been teammates, so it's just an outlier, and there'll be again another team that making sure the car's in fit state, and then just looking at the differences of the drivers and the settings.
Fernando Alonso has put his fluorescent Aston Martin cap on and is now walking down the pit lane, waving to the crowd over on the left-hand side as he then makes his way upstairs, as does Charles Leclerc, up to the sort of top levels of the Monaco pit buildings, which is where the engineering rooms are for the debriefs that they will now go into ahead of the next free practice session, which gets underway in a couple of hours' time. But Carlos Sainz then quickest. Was he on pole here last year, or did Leclerc?
Leclerc, but it was a Ferrari 1-2.
Yeah, it was Ferrari 1-2. And then he got ahead of Leclerc, but they both dropped behind the Red Bull of Perez.
Interesting. I just saw Bono, sorry to cut across you, Lewis Hamilton's engineer, Peter Bonington, just taking a photo of the tyres. Of course, that was something that both drivers are complaining about. So it's amazing, isn't it, the lengths they go to try and improve.
I don't know what. Yeah.
There might be a small amount of graining, potentially.
It is Carlos Sainz who was quickest in the first free practice session, and it was Fernando Alonso second fastest, Hamilton third, Perez fourth, Charles Leclerc fifth, and Max Verstappen only down in sixth position. Really tricky day for the Red Bull driver. It's going to be a fascinating fight for pole position tomorrow, but we've still got more free practice to come for the Monaco Grand Prix, but Carlos Sainz and Ferrari looking strong. So that is the order. Perez has got to be feeling positive there.
Yeah, well,
or not.
Red Bull didn't look great Maybe Perez was ahead of Verstappen and was more comfortable, but both Red Bulls weren't exactly flying. Perez winner last year's 4th place, Verstappen 6th.
Yeah, right.
Better to be ahead of the championship leader, but
true.
4th. He's not here to finish 4th this weekend, Checo.
Certainly not. He's here to make it back-to-back Monaco Grand Prix victories. We will get more information in free practice 2 a little bit later on. We'll see the soft running for the first time, maybe a little bit of long running. Not that long running is necessarily that vital around this street circuit, but it is Carlos Sainz who ends the session quickest for Ferrari. Alonso 2nd, Hamilton 3rd, Max Verstappen, the championship leader, only down in 6th after that free practice session, with Sergio Perez, his title rival, ahead of him in 4th. This has been an IMG production for BBC Radio 5 Live. We'll be back in a bit for free practice 2.